Good morning. My name is Colleen Robbs, and I'm the director of the Equal Business Opportunity Office here at the Solid Waste Authority at Palm Beach County. And we welcome you this morning to our virtual Transformational Tuesday. During this pandemic season, the EBO team is committed to bringing you experts in various industries to give you tools to help you and your business succeed. Today, we will have a roundtable discussion with Dr. Jasmine Duvall, a clinical psychologist, about stress and coping in the workplace during this pandemic. Dr. Duvall works with individuals and families from all stages of life to identify and overcome problematic thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. We thank her so much for being here today.
And to add to that, good morning, everybody, but to add to that, Dr. Duvall is also a graduate from Nova Southeastern University with her doctoral degree in clinical psychology in 2014. She earned a double bachelor's degree in mathematics and psychology from the University of Florida in 2007. Currently, she's with Kotler Healthcare, a group practice in Wellington, Florida. Dr. Duvall offers virtual therapy services for individuals dealing with a variety of issues. Today, she will be utilizing her expertise with us to help us navigate stress and anxiety during this season, and we're so looking forward to this topic. We need this. Dr. Duvall.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies. Good morning, Colleen and Hattie. Thank you for having me here this morning. I'm really excited to come in today and really share something that, we've all been going through. I work with individuals, families who, have their own set of challenges, their own set of experiences, but when it comes to this pandemic, I'm going to use the term we a lot because it's something that we're all going through, myself included. So I'm really excited to come in today and share how we can get through this together, relying on each other, creating meaning and learning how to deal with this in an effective way. So thank you for having me this morning. So, I know with this pandemic, it's so different from anything that we've experienced in our lifetime. And, we have experienced storms, we've experienced mass trauma such as school shootings, we've experienced 9/11. But this pandemic has added an extra layer of challenge, and I believe that layer is the isolation piece. Typically when we experience these events on such a large scale, we can draw together. That's our comfort. We can rely on each other. We can have get-togethers. We can embrace one another. We can, go out to dinner. We can establish a sense of safety among our community, among our loved ones. But with this pandemic, it has really uprooted how we relate to one another. Even something as innocent as a hug or a kiss is now seen as something that has to be approached very cautiously or not at all. And the difference here is that there is a healthy amount of fear that we probably all should have because there's an illness out there that is potentially fatal, and it's normal to fear that. But what I would like to talk about today is how to live alongside that fear without being driven or controlled by that fear. So you will hear me today use the word acceptance a lot. What I'd like to drive home is acceptance-based coping as opposed to fear-based coping. Accepting what we cannot control and controlling what we can. So that will be the meat of what I talk about today, building resilience in this time.
Those are very good points, and we realize that this is a very important topic, that we're all experiencing these different challenges during this time. And so in planning this event today, we invited the business community and the SWA family to tune in and capture some tidbits that could probably help us in our daily lives. And we also asked the business community and our SWA family to submit questions about anything that they're experiencing during this time. So the first question involves, or is, in general, how are most people coping with this pandemic?
So that's a very good question, Colleen. And actually, the CDC just conducted a study in June with 5,000 participants, roughly 5,000. And what they have found is that of those participants, roughly 30% are reporting symptoms that look like anxiety or depressive disorders. About 25% are reporting symptoms looking like some type of traumatic or stressor-related disorder. And 13.3% of that population has stated that they are actually using substances such as alcohol, legal or illegal drugs to cope with the challenges of this season. So to answer how we're coping, this is really impacting our mental health. Today I'd like to really dig in to what acceptance-based coping looks like, because I believe right now, understandably so, a lot of us are operating from a place of fear. This is very challenging. This pandemic, COVID-19, has affected all of us, is affecting all of us. It has, for many homes, created financial hardship. It has impacted mental illness for those of us who challenge with mental illness. It has impacted us in a variety of ways. So I think that we all need to give ourselves some grace during this time. I think that is going to be the most important piece. None of us here have ever been through a pandemic, and we don't have a booklet or a manual on how to get through this. So giving ourselves some grace, being able to talk about what we're going through, what we're experiencing, and finding safe and healthy ways to pull together, those are going to be the keys to getting through this right now.
Mm-hmm. That's so good, and we appreciate you saying that, because it's amazing how, you go in the grocery stores, and when I'm in the line, I can actually see people. When I see people get close to me, I think of COVID. Mm-hmm. I see each person as a possible COVID issue, and I don't want to see like that. I want to be at peace. I want to be at ease. Even when it's time to go to the doctor, even coming back into the workplace, we've got our distance. SWA is a great place to be. But by the same token, now we're with people, so there comes this wall you build. You're trying to be friendly, but yet you're still thinking, oh, I've got to be isolated as well. I can't get too close. So we think about, what is anxiety? Mm-hmm. And is it something that's normal?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. Hattie, you bring up a lot of good points in that because of the nature of the virus, we have almost built this mistrust for others in a way that we're navigating these social situations, especially the workplace, very guarded. And sometimes it can border on the line of paranoia. And you're protecting yourself, but at the same time, you can come into the workplace with fear. So I'd like to talk about anxiety. A lot of times, stress and anxiety are used interchangeably, but they are not the same. So stress is our body's natural reaction to any event that requires change on our part. And I believe we can all agree that this pandemic requires a lot of change. We've had to change how we go about our daily tasks. So the stress component is a very natural reaction to what we're experiencing right now. Now, when it comes to anxiety, if you experience stress for a prolonged period of time, it can naturally lead to anxiety, and anxiety deals with fear. Anxiety includes a sense of worry, excessive worry, fear about the future, fear about our health. It's when we're in a stress response, our fight or flight response kicks in. We know that we need to do something to change to protect ourselves. But anxiety allows that fight or flight to stay on even when we don't need it. So for example, if a lion were to come in this room right now, my stress response would be very helpful. It would tell me, get up and get out of here. But if I'm sitting here and there is no lion in the room, but that stress response kicks in, that is anxiety. Right now, during this pandemic, we cannot see who has COVID. When we go into the grocery
That's the
store,
problem.
when we go into the workplace, it would be nice if there was this big sign on everyone's head that says COVID, no COVID. But this is an invisible condition, so it's understandable that anxiety kicks in because this is a potentially fatal illness. But what I would like to talk about is how to not act out of fear, how to be able to experience that anxiety, accept that it is there, but act in a way based on our values and act in a way that is going to be helpful and not unhelpful.
It's good. I'm going to practice that.
Okay. So I'd actually like to draw your attention to this quote here. And this quote is from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is a big contributor of the mindfulness movement, and we'll talk about mindfulness a little bit later. But he says, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And that is so big during this challenging time. There's a lot going on that we can't control, but we can learn how to navigate this moment. We can learn how to navigate this challenging emotional state that we're going through right now.
One of the other questions that we had, and I think Colleen was going to talk more about this, is how we can fulfill our work duties without feeling overwhelmed or burnt out.
Okay. That's a very good question. So what I'd like to give you some tips today, but I'd like to break them down into 3 components. And in the world of psychology, what's so great about it is that there are scientists who study behavior and resilience after these mass traumas. And what they have found is that the people who overcome these challenging times have found a way to create meaning from these times, and a lot of times recreate meaning by turning to our personal values, such as spiritual or religious beliefs, kindness or friendship or compassion, overcoming, kind of those personal things that drive our life. And not only found meaning during these times, but also interacted and participated in actions that gave their life fulfillment in a safe way. So the 3 C's of stress tolerance, that's what I would like to call them today, are control, coherence, and connectedness. So has been researched that if we can practice the 3 C's, control, coherence, and connectedness, we will fare well during this challenging time. And we will have the best recovery possible once this challenging time is over. So the sense of control refers to a person's ability to access resources in order to meet their needs. So taking goal-directed, value-driven actions. The sense of coherence refers to making meaning of what we're going through right now. So answering the question, what is happening and what am I doing to get through this? And connectedness refers to embracing our human interconnectedness, embracing the idea that even though we are socially distancing, we are in this together. We all have a part in overcoming this. We are not alone in this. So I'd like to break down these 3 C's even further. Let's look at control. So control refers to our ability to take action. So there's a lot during this time that we cannot control, but there are a lot of things that we can. And it's important to take hold of those things that we can control. For instance, basic self-care. So we hear about self-care all the time, but what does that really mean? I'm a mother, so I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. So what that means for me is taking care of myself in the same way that I take care of them. You know, I make sacrifices for them. I make sure they eat well. I make sure they sleep well. I'm researching the best things to do for them. But a lot of times we don't do those things for ourselves. And it's really important during this time to make sure we're eating well, eating clean, putting those things in our bodies that we know are going to fuel us in the best way, getting enough sleep. And I know insomnia was a problem before this pandemic even hit. You know, so learning some basic sleep hygiene techniques, making sure we're getting enough sleep, adequate sleep. Exercise. Exercise really helps to strengthen our brain and really helps to build resilience. It actually allows us to tolerate stress much better when we're physically active. We're giving ourselves a foundation to really build our day upon. Creating a daily routine. So I know that when this pandemic came, it really changed our day, how we go about working. We're now telecommuting, so we're having to, a lot of times, balance home life at the same time that we're balancing work life. And I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, that has been very difficult. Hattie and Colleen, can you relate to that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I find that I appreciate that SWA has created a plan to keep us safe. Mm-hmm. So we know the guidelines that everybody is practicing for safe engagement. So that takes some of the stress off knowing that they've planned it, they've told me about it, and we're practicing it at all levels. And then when you telecommute, then you have to balance the amount of your day that you're engaged, you know. And so you feel like you need to do more because it's accessible, as opposed to when you're at work, you're there. But I find myself, I have my laptop, I grab my laptop, I bring it home, and it's like nonstop because a lot of us, you know, we respond to ideas. Oh, I have an idea.
Yeah.
So I open that laptop up and I start writing down that information or entering the information. So I think the daily routine is very important, and we all have experienced just making sure we have that routine to balance our life, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, that's
Take that daily basic care
Yeah.
and the routine.
That's it.
Definitely. And you know, I heard something in there that kind of brings us to the next point of creating healthy boundaries. So when we're at home and when we're telecommuting, it's only natural to have a sense of flexibility. I think flexibility is a good thing. But what can happen when we don't create clear boundaries for ourselves, we can sometimes feel like we're not doing our best in the workplace and we're not doing our best at home. I know I can definitely relate to that. When this all started, I had to switch to virtual therapy. And that was challenging in and of itself because, like I said, I have 2 little ones at home. So being able to really step into that role of therapist or psychologist and kind of also still be in that role of mom was very challenging. So I found that having to set healthy boundaries was very important. I think that's important for all of us. What that looks like, if you can, and I know that every workplace is different, you have different expectations, different requirements. But I encourage you, if you can, to create a clear work time for yourself in the same way that we do when we come to the office. We know we're at the office from this time to this time. Even if we're at home, I'm encouraging you to try to create a set cutoff time for yourself so that you don't experience that burnout or feel overwhelmed. It's important to have that time that you give yourself permission to just enjoy. And, to some extent, we enjoy working too, but if we're realistic, when we're not working, we can do other things that we enjoy. So creating healthy boundaries with our time, with the different roles that we take on right now, even with information. We receive so much information in this season of social media. It's like we're on all the time. We always have access to news from various sources. So even guarding how much news and how much information we're taking in is important as well. When we're constantly hearing about COVID or hearing about the newest political thing or hearing about different tragedies here or there, it can really take a toll on our emotional well-being. So even kind of giving yourself permission to log out. I know when even going back to self-care and sleeping, I encourage everyone when it comes to sleep and getting better sleep to unplug at a certain time of day. Where at this time, I no longer take in unnecessary information. I'm allowing my brain to relax. I'm allowing myself to focus on this moment, to have a sense of peace. And I think that's what we should all be doing to guard ourselves against being so overwhelmed with all of the information. Even when it comes to information, it can be helpful to choose one source, 1 or 2 sources that you trust, as opposed to getting messages from a lot of different sources. Because as we know, a lot of information has been conflicting with COVID, which I think has contributed to the sense of anxiety, at some points not having a clear sense of direction. And it's good in the workplace that I see that SWA has created some structure, some consistency that really does help create peace in the workplace.
Dr. Duvall, how do you feel about the teledoc? Do you think that's been helpful to people during this pandemic?
I find that it really has. So I'm so grateful that insurance companies have actually allowed our telehealth sessions to be covered for everyone in the same way that an in-person session would be covered. So before COVID, in Florida, insurance would not cover a telehealth session, at least when it comes to psychotherapy. But it has been very helpful in keeping that social distance, but also creating a sense of connection and allowing people to access the health care that they need. So yes, that's been very helpful. And, it's also important that we, and we'll talk about this a little later when it comes to getting the help that we need, but in helping ourselves, I would encourage everyone to plan something enjoyable every day. That doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to go kayaking every day. Kayaking is something that I enjoy. And no, I can't do that every day. But I can do something as simple as, having my favorite cup of tea. That's simple. I enjoy it. I can listen to some jazz and relax. That's enjoyable, even if it's 10 minutes. but plan something that you look forward to every day, even if it's small. Spend time outdoors. We see four walls quite often during this time. It's important to get outside, experience fresh air, be able to enjoy nature. Also, knowing the facts. During this time, it is natural for rumors to circulate, but it's important to guard your mind against those things that aren't true. So really checking in with your sources, guarding your sources of information. And then lastly, under the control aspect is creating short and long-term goals. And this is very important. When we think about action, our actions don't have to be based on what we're feeling or even what we're thinking. And let me clarify that. When I say that I can experience a moment of fear and still commit to doing things that are important to me, still commit to doing things that are aligned with my values. I don't have to allow fear or anxiety or worry or even sadness to control my day. I can acknowledge that those emotions are there and still commit to doing things that are helpful to me and to my family. And when it comes to long-term goals, during this time, being able to set a long-term goal for yourself and work on the smaller steps to help reach that goal can really tie our present to the future, meaning it allows us to focus on a time when COVID is no longer as serious of an issue as it is now. What that does is allows us a healthy sense of optimism and hopefulness. It allows us to look toward the future. And creating long-term goals also allows us to think about positive things related to the future as opposed to ruminating on those worries or fears that we're having right now. Those things will take up space in our mind, which leaves less space for that negative rumination. Any questions at all that are comments?
Yeah, I had a question, or I have a question. I know that during this time, like you said, it's good to have short-term and long-term goals, and we all want this to be over, as soon as possible. But it's also, I feel, beneficial to set those small goals, even though you may have to change your plans. I plan to go to California for Christmas, but if it's not gonna be over and safe, then I'll push it out a little further. So I find that it's good to set those plans and goals, but be prepared to, make changes. What do you think about that, and people being able to adapt to moving the goals?
Yes, I definitely agree with that. Being flexible and adaptable. And I like how you kind of mentioned like a time frame. And I encourage everyone to kind of look at this chapter in phases. So, okay, if things have improved by that time, then I will go. If they haven't, then I may need to change my plan. And I like that idea, that approach of being flexible, because as you know, we can't really, predict how this virus is going to respond. If you remember back in March, I think when it really began to affect Palm Beach County, I think a lot of us thought that it would affect us for a matter of weeks, maybe a month or two. But here we are 5 months later, and it's still a pretty serious condition, a serious issue. So being able to adapt and be flexible is key here, because we don't know what things will look like in a few months. So setting those goals, but being able to adapt based on the information that we receive. I think that's key.
And that's good. I look at where we are in all of this, and in the midst of it, we've had some trauma. We've had some drastic things to happen. But by the same token, in the midst of the pandemic, I'm listening to what you're saying. And so much of what you're saying, we're able to use that in the pandemic and outside of the pandemic. And if we put those things in practice right now, life should be smooth sailing once we exit this season of life. But if we can put those things in place, what I look at in the pandemic is that I've learned so much in this season. You know, as Colleen was talking about earlier, you know, just balancing work life at home and making sure that you're effective, just as effective at home as you are, you know, in the workplace. That's the goal. That's the importance of the telecommuting, is being able to still get the same quality work at home as you do here in this place. Unfortunately, when we're at home and even in this place, often we don't take the breaks or the lunches or the things that we should do. As you've said, that's a part of self-care. That's a part of keeping us from burning out. But I do believe that there are people that could speak to the fact that, yeah, the pandemic has been stressful, but by the same token, I've learned so much in the midst of it all.
And Hattie, I love that you say that, because what you're touching on is coherence, creating meaning and creating a sense of what is this and how am I best navigating this. That's what you're touching on. Being able to create a narrative of what life is right now and the best way for you to navigate that. And for a lot of people, that narrative will really rely on their personal values, gratitude. I'm hearing gratitude here, okay? So yes, this is going on, but I'm learning a lot about myself. These challenges have really strengthened me in a lot of different areas. And that is key to getting through this season, creating meaning from it. And I'd like to take this time to talk about mindfulness. When you hear self-care, taking a break, it's really important to find time to stay in the moment. When it comes to work, we can think 10 steps ahead, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that can also lead to burnout, and it can worsen anxiety if we're always future-oriented. Mindfulness is that ability to stay in the moment, to really tune in to what you're thinking, what you're feeling. And during a break, or during the day, is a good time to practice mindfulness. And what mindfulness can look like, it can look like just focusing on your meal that you're eating, your lunch, savoring each bite, focusing on how it's nourishing your body. Naturally, when you're practicing mindfulness, when you're trying to stay in the moment, we can get distracted. Other thoughts can float in. But during a mindfulness exercise, you don't judge yourself. You don't judge what you're experiencing. You just draw bare awareness to it. It really brings you in the moment. And depending on what you observe, it can really help you choose the best coping tools for that day. So if I'm taking a break, I'm eating my lunch, or if I'm at home and I'm taking a break, and let's say I wash the dishes or wash a cup, just for an example, really taking a moment to feel how the water feels on my hands, the structure of the cup, paying full attention to the present moment. When you pay attention to the present moment, it can decrease stress, it can decrease anxiety by allowing your focus to not be on the future, but on the right now. And in that right now, if you find that, hey, I'm bored, I need something to change. If you find that, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed, it can allow you to really customize the rest of your day. So if I'm feeling bored, let me try something new later on. Maybe that's a new puzzle or a new activity or a new Zoom group, but it allows you to really customize treatment for yourself. And when it comes to coherence and creating meaning, it's important that we utilize acceptance. So acceptance refers to being able to fully acknowledge the different emotional states that we experience right now. A lot of times when it comes to anxiety, we want to avoid anxiety because it is uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. But avoiding it a lot of times stuffs it or makes it grow. It can grow uncontrollably. So really acknowledging and accepting your emotions, accepting the flux of your emotional state. You may feel anxiety one moment, next moment you feel optimism, the next moment you feel hope. Sometimes you may feel sadness because of the state that we're in, and it's okay to acknowledge those things and be able to accept that they're happening while also recognizing that those challenging moments pass on by. You know, anxiety passes, sadness passes, and it's okay to experience those moments. When it comes to acceptance-based coping, it's a lot different from fear-based coping because it's driven by helpful things as opposed to unhelpful emotional states.
Okay.
Now let's really talk about connectedness because I think this piece is extremely important as well. During this pandemic, we have had to physically guard ourselves from other people, isolate. And I think that piece can really hurt us psychologically because we were created to connect and we were created to be social. And it's really important right now to find healthy ways to connect with each other. We can connect with each other virtually. We can have a smaller group of people that we can connect with even in person and still practice social distancing. But it's important not to allow yourself to psychologically isolate, even when you're physically distancing. I love the movement that changed the hashtag social distancing to physical distancing because we don't really want to social distance. We want to stay social. Even in the workplace, when we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling anxious or overwhelmed, it is important to have safe spaces to express that with one another so that we can remind each other we're not in this alone. We're in this together. There was a hashtag, I believe, that said alone together. So we're in this together. It can be helpful even in meditation practices to really focus on the other people in the world who are going through the same thing. You are not alone. And that is really important to remember here. So I encourage you in the workplace to have a safe place where you express what you're going through and to find solutions for it if you need a solution. So if you're feeling overwhelmed at home because, hey, maybe the workload is too high or you're having a meeting during a time where the kids are yelling all over the place, being able to express that and hopefully finding a solution to that.
Okay, good. That is so good because we all need, we need to feel connected.
Sure.
In some way, shape, form, or fashion, that's extremely important. That fuels us being connected. Our last question of the day is, how can we tell when it's time to seek professional help? How can you tell when it's time to seek some professional help?
So that's a great question. And what I would first like to say is that it's never a bad time to seek professional help. It's never a bad idea to talk to a therapist if you have access to mental health care. And I know that a lot of workplaces have an EAP plan, an employment assistance program, where a first few sessions will be covered, and then insurance will kick in. Mm-hmm. But some red flags that it's time to speak with a professional is if the emotions that you're experiencing are affecting your daily functioning, that you're not able to get through your day in the typical way that you would. Mm-hmm. You're seeing excessive worry, excessive sadness, a sense of hopelessness and helplessness. If you're finding it difficult to practice self-care, one thing we haven't touched on a lot is depression. So for a lot of people, maybe anxiety isn't as big of a deal. And again, anxiety and depression can go hand in hand. But maybe there's just an intense sense of sadness and grief right now, which is understandable. But if you're finding that it's really difficult to cope, you're not feeling that sense of support, it's hard to get through your day, it's hard to find enjoyment in anything, it may be time to reach out. And I've included some resources here for ways that you can connect with a mental health care provider. I really like the site psychologytoday.com. You're able to kind of filter your search criteria to find a therapist who takes your insurance, who specializes in what you're looking for, who offers telehealth if that's what you're looking for. You have SAMHSA's national helpline that is open 24 hours a day. You can call and they will help you find a provider. There are some educational resources here as well. And then if you're needing immediate help, because let's be honest, this is a challenging time, and we may all feel moments of intense emotion where it can feel scary, then I encourage you to reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. They are open 24 hours a day for someone to talk with you, help you, connect you with the care that you need.
Thank you so much, Dr. Duvall. I must tell you that you have been a wealth of knowledge to us today, and we appreciate it. I mean, such a time as this, such great information that not only can we use in the pandemic, but we're able to carry it with us when this season is over. We do thank you for coming to SWA today to help all of us, not only our SWA family, but the business community that is tuned in as well. I am Hattie Asbury, the outreach specialist here for the Equal Business Opportunity Office, and we want you to stay connected because the Solid Waste Authority is the place to be. Visit swa.org/EBO to see upcoming events and opportunities. Register today to become a vendor and begin receiving great benefits. Visit swa.org/vendor and become a vendor today. Now, if you are a SWA vendor, don't forget to keep your registration current and your information updated. Simply visit swa.org/vendor.